Hey, welcome to Business 101, Introduction to Business. And in this fifth lecture in our series on Module 2 on ethics and corporate social responsibility, we want to answer the question, how do I know? Well, how do I know what? We'll answer that question in just a moment, but really what I want you to take note of is we're about halfway through this module, and we've been talking about business ethics and how your personal example provides a guide for others to follow your example in setting your ethical values around you. And on the flip side of this, I want to ask another question, which was actually raised by this man. This is the esteemed Dr. Clayton Christensen, the late Dr. Clayton Christensen, for decades a professor at Harvard Business, and the noted author of the book you see there, The Innovator's Dilemma, When New Technologies Cause Great Firms to Fail. It is a very influential book in business. If you are at all interested in the topic of technological innovation and startups and those kinds of things, it's a must-read. More importantly, Clayton Christensen was known as a highly ethical, value-driven man. And he taught for years, as I mentioned, at Harvard. And he gave, as is oftentimes distinguished authors and professors like he gave the commencement address to a graduating class of MBAs at Columbia University a few years ago. And one of the questions he asked and then answered in the midst of this commencement address: how do I know I'll stay out of jail? Now, you may look at that question and you may be chuckling just a little bit inside, because after all, this is a class on an introduction to business. Why am I even asking this question? How do I know I'll stay out of jail? And let me tell you why this is an important question. It's because business majors, generally speaking, don't go to business school planning to go to jail. But an awful lot of business students end up going to jail. In fact, the incarceration rate of business majors is significantly higher than any other college major. Nobody plans to go to college in order to go to jail, but a lot of folks do end up there. But you can be forgiven if you laughed a little bit when you saw the question, because quite frankly, that's exactly what happened when Dr. Christensen posed the question in his commencement address to these MBAs at Columbia University. Remember, these are folks who are now graduating with an MBA from one of the most prestigious universities in the entire United States. And here's a professor asking them, how do you know you'll stay out of jail? And they laughed. And he said, that's okay that you're laughing, because no one really thinks of this question. Most people think it's a little humorous. And then Dr. Christensen said after a pause, but it's not funny to me. It's personal. Why was it personal for Dr. Christensen? Not because he'd ever been to jail, but as he said, when I was getting my degree at Harvard Business School, one of my classmates was Jeffrey Skilling. Jeffrey Skilling, some of you may know, the disgraced CEO of the Enron Corporation, now serving time in jail. Dr. Christensen went on to say when he was getting his graduate degree at Oxford in the United Kingdom, 2 of the students in that cohort are now in jail. And so you see, again, just to underscore the point, the reason Dr. Christensen poses the question to business students is because no one goes to business school planning to go to jail, but quite a few do. How can you make sure that as you proceed along with your education and eventually your career, that you won't go to jail? Well, as we turn back to the slide, I would argue at least part of the answer then is to avoid the marginal cost mistake in ethics. What is marginal cost? And how does that apply to ethics? Well, in business, marginal cost is the cost of the very next unit of production that you haven't made yet. So let's say that you're operating a factory and you're building widgets, and you have already built 1,000 widgets today, and you're wondering, what is the cost of building one more widget? In other words, what's the one marginal cost of the unit at the margin? You haven't pulled it, right? The 1,000, you've already spent that money, the stuff you've already built. That's a sunk cost. We're really just interested in the marginal cost of the very next unit you're trying to decide upon. Just that one. And you see, that's the marginal cost mistake in ethics. The marginal cost mistake in ethics essentially says, maybe I can just get away with it just this once. And the way it plays out is, for instance, as you see on the slide, look, I know as a general rule most people shouldn't do this, but hey, in this particular circumstance, just this once, isn't it okay? So, for instance, you may be saying, look, I always tell my salespeople who I manage not to pad your expense account. Don't create dummy expenses on the expense account. You be honest on your expense account when you get reimbursement. But I worked so hard, and I promised the wife and kids we'd stay in that 5-star hotel in Hawaii next month. And, I do so much for the company already. I mean, isn't it okay if just this once I pad my expense account a little bit? We'd have such a nicer vacation. And really, what's the difference? Just this once. Or it might look like this. I know that you're only supposed to report the sales in the month that you collect the revenue for the sake of earning commissions. But after all, at the end of the year, doesn't it all wash out to be the same amount? And if I report it a little bit early, just a week and a half early, it means that I get to the next tier in commissions. That would mean so much to my husband. It would mean so much to our income. Everybody does it. Can't I just get away with it just this once? And you see there, the second bullet point on the slide, Christensen would go on to say in that commencement address, justification for infidelity and dishonesty in all their manifestations eventually lies in the marginal cost economics of just this once. So what do I want to say to you? How can you improve your chances of staying out of jail? Well, one way that you can improve your chances of staying out of jail is realizing how temptation works. How temptation works is, generally speaking, folks who on a good day can think of themselves as good people being tempted to do something they know really, it's not even questionable. It's not right. But can't they just do it just this once? Most of us taking this class are old enough. We're old enough to know. And quite frankly, we're old enough for many of us to have been on the business end of someone betraying us, of someone being dishonest with us. And for a few of us listening to this lecture, if you're honest, if you look in the mirror, you were that person that betrayed or were dishonest with someone else. And if you think about that person who betrayed you those many years ago, if we're honest, wouldn't we agree that when that person decided to betray us and to be dishonest with us, didn't that temptation start with someone who, in many ways was generally a good person being tempted to do this thing just this one time? It's the way temptation works. Now, not all of us are tempted by the same things, right? Some of us are tempted by money, but some of us aren't tempted by money really at all. We're tempted by other things like power, like the need to be liked by other people, by insecurities, by fear, by anxiety. But there's an old saying, the devil makes custom-made suits, and eventually temptation will reach you where you are the weakest. Now, I can't guarantee that you'll stay out of jail, but it can at least improve your chances by giving you the information on how temptation actually works in the real world. And it will come and tempt you and whisper in your ear, can't you get away with it just this once? Knowing how temptation works, maybe it improves your chances to continue your success, to continue leading by example, your example of living by value, conviction, what you know to be right, what you know to be good. And then maybe that will help you to stay out of jail. I hope that helps. We'll see you in the next lecture.